Welcome to the Creative Ticket Podcast, brought to you by Pacific Video and hosted by Geraldo Rodriguez. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast has been originally created, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people listening today. On today's episode, I have the pleasure of talking to Sarah Jane Starr. She's an Australian actor living in Sydney, New South Wales. She graduated from the National Institute of Dramatic Arts in 2013 and has been working on stage and in front of the cameras ever since. She was born and bred here in Sydney. She's also a drama teacher and became a NIDA tutor right after graduating.
Welcome, SJ. I'm glad you accepted my invitation to come and talk about your career and creative insights. Is it a proper introduction? Is it all true what I just said?
For the UK, yes, I did live in the UK for almost 2 years. I worked as a flight attendant when I was 19. And the US, well, I would probably say I visited the US. I didn't necessarily live there. I was there for 3 months doing pilot season in 2015.
And how was that experience? How was it like?
At the time, if you were to ask me that question when I got back, I would have a lot more to say. But now that I reflect back, almost 10 years now, is that, look, it was a learning experience. It wasn't an enjoyable experience. I found Los Angeles, I didn't find it a kind place. I found it quite soul sucking in a way. And I know that might not be a nice term, but I was there for 3 months. I didn't really do very much. The reason why I went over there is that I had signed with a manager while I was in Sydney through my agent at the time, who I'm not with anymore, but they had connections in LA. And I auditioned for this gentleman. He, at the time, was managing Jackie Weaver, who had just done really well with Animal Kingdom, and a few other actors and actresses that I had recognized. And I auditioned for him, and he said that I did really well. And he was like, how would you feel about coming to LA? I would love to represent you. And I was like, sure. I took out 2 credit cards to have money to go over there. And when I got over there, I hardly saw him. I hardly heard from him. He promised me all these things in my initial meeting with him when I landed. He wanted me to change my hair. It was very not what I expected. It's not what I expected at all. And look, I had 2 meetings, one at Disney Channel and one at he was a casting director. I can't remember. John McCavery, I think was his name. And then I had 2 auditions, and one was for King Arthur, and it was literally for the role at the start. It was King Arthur's mother when he was a child, where she gets killed right before they roll the beginning credits of the film. So it's kind of over and done with, and we never see you're the character again. And the other one was for Independence Day 2. And I went for the daughter of Bill Pullman's character, all grown up. And sadly, didn't work out, which is fine. It happens. But in terms of the overall experience, it's definitely not the glitz and glamour that we, across the pond here in Australia think that it actually is. For one point I thought, I forgot that gun laws are open over there. So I was walking down the street and all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, these people could be packing.
Right.
I just didn't, I thought I was safe walking down the street, and all of a sudden I had this realization that actually people can carry guns in a street and anything could happen. Yeah.
And is it a usual thing for Australian actors to actually go to the US, go to Los Angeles and do a pilot season, be there for a couple of months and see how it goes? Look, or is it like a bigger step? Is it like a second step?
I think it's funny. I think the culture, I think the process is changing somewhat. Um, and it's funny, I was talking about this with someone that I'm directing their show with for Sydney Fringe yesterday. And um, it's funny, like back in the day of Nicole Kidman, making it and becoming who she is very different to how Margot Robbie became who she is now in LA. Um, and and even Sarah Snook has gone through a different process as well. Um, when I graduated, it was the done thing. You go over to America, do LA, you do the pilot season, and that's generally in January, February. Though I think it's getting later. But to be brutally honest, I think it's now all year round. To be honest, I think the timeline is somewhat changed. Pardon me. I I think nowadays people audition from home, as in Australia, send their tests over, and if they are selected or if they've really done something special in their tests, then I think they then go through the process. And then once, the producers over in America are ready to have them, they'll fly over there. I know that that process has happened before. And I think it's becoming more and more likely after COVID and things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think sometimes we have this image that not saying this is your case, but sometimes we have this image that the career is about getting to somewhere, getting
Yes.
somewhere, getting to LA, making it in the US, and that's what it all comes to. But there is actually a lot more happening everywhere
Yes.
and that's quite rich and interesting, and sometimes just as creative, even more.
Yes, I know a lot of Aussies go to Canada. That's another way into the industry if you're wanting to make it in North America. I know some actors. There was a gentleman, Adam Stafford, who was in the year above me at drama school. He went to Canada and did really well there. I haven't really caught up on what he's currently doing at the moment, but I know that he did really well in Canada. I think he was like a lead in a TV show. It was like an action hero kind of TV show, and yeah, there is many ways up the mountain, is what I've always been told. Yeah, many ways up the mountain. Um, Look, as I said, LA was a learning experience. It's funny, I couldn't wait to get home and do independent theater and get my creative juices flowing and not have to pretend to be someone. And there's a lot of falseness about the place, and I know that's not really, people say that they'll do things and look after you, and I was kind of left to fend for myself, and I didn't really like that because I went over there with trust, and that trust was broken. And no one really, and even my manager, like, I hardly ever spoke to me when I got home. um I tried to contact him, instead the assistant. I got shifted to the assistant, and then sooner or later the guy just emailed and went, yeah, look, you're not very good. Like, your accent's not great and everything, even though I know for a fact my accent was great because he told me so. And I also see a dialect coach all the time. I just think it was just like, I think it was just too hard for them. And I just leave it at that. And for me, it's just water under the bridge and move on to the next thing. You can't
Right.
really dwell. We're in a day and age where we can't really dwell on things. You just got to move on. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we'll just tie ourselves into knots.
And you talking about your accent like a
Hmm.
dialect coach. Is that something Aussie actors also try to work on? Because
Yes.
I've been trying to get my Australian accent right. But you guys are doing the opposite. You're doing the
Yes.
American accent.
Yes. So it's generally one of the basic ones that, we learn. I know that for a fact, any actor or wannabe actor that goes to a casting director workshop and they ask, how do I get into the industry and all that kind of stuff, they always, one of the things they always say in their top five is have a good American accent. And, you do at drama school, you work on accents and things like that. I think English actors and Australian actors are brilliant at learning accents. We're willing to really jump in and dive. It's very, in my experience, I find it really rare watching films. There's not many American actors that explore accents and do them well. I know that Naomi Watts's ex-partner, what's his name? He did an Australian accent, and it was bloody great. It was amazing. And obviously he was married to Naomi Watts at the time, who could, coach him and everything like that. And he was used to the sounds. But there's not many American, apart from Meryl Streep. You look at Meryl Streep and her career, and the varying characters that she's done, like, Out of Africa that she does with Robert Redford. She's actually is it Dutch or Danish? But she's either a Dutch or Danish national, but she lives in South Africa, or has been living in South Africa for a certain amount of time. So she's actually got not conflicting, but she's got two accents that she's trying to, like, even the accent has a story. It started off in a particular location, and now it's ended up where she lives is in a different location. And the accent is influenced by her story. Tilda Swinton is another one. She does, there's a movie called I Am Love. Now, Tilda Swinton's a Scottish actress. She plays a Russian national that speaks fluent Italian and Russian. And her performance is brilliant, and I think when I look at those two actors, like, they're people that I look up to, because it's all about being a chameleon and being able to fit into, the most, I don't know, it's just being able to play and I find it intelligent. Like, I find that's really intelligent, smart acting, and I love that. And that's what I would like to aspire to be, or hope that I'm somewhat am, in my process of being an actor till the day I die.
I'm sure you are. Actually, I will actually add to that. My wife and I have just recently seen you on stage performing in Mercury Poisoning, and you actually played, if I'm not wrong, three characters on that same play.
Three characters. I
did. Different nationalities: a Russian and two Americans, right?
Two Americans from
Americans.
two different areas.
So and both of us were really overwhelmed. Not that we were surprised, because we were not surprised about the quality of the performance nor the quality of the play, but we were really so grateful for being drawn into it, for being carried into the story, because the cast overall was excellent, and everyone else, obviously the script and the directing were also amazing. But what is it like for you to play different characters and play characters from different backgrounds?
So I think with Mercury Poisoning, it was the first play in a long time where I had to play multiple characters. The previous few plays that I had done was purely on one sole character and their journey. This one was a little bit different. I came late into the process of Mercury Poisoning and its creation. So it had been developed from 2020, and I kind of came in after the creation and the workshopping and all that kind of stuff. It's actually really funny. In the performance season, the writer came up to me and she's like, I so love what you've done with the makeup artist, because I actually imagined her like this. And she showed me, and I went, oh, right. I could play her like that if you like, but I just didn't see her like that. And it was very more slow, and like, she imagined the makeup artist with like a cigarette, not really caring and not really giving a shit. And whereas from how I interpret her was I made her a southern belle that had literally dumped her life in I don't know, Alabama, and moved to LA to be someone, and she ended up being a makeup artist. That's kind of the little mini story I created for her. The Russian soldier, she was Russian, but with her, I played her in relation to animal work, and I just made her deadly. I just made her like a cat playing with her food, and teasing and taunting, and that's what I really loved about it. Forgive me, I'm a little bit croaky today. I've been teaching this morning. And Janie was a little bit hard, because Janie was actually based on a real life character, a real life person. So there's not much footage of her. I tried the best I could do to match her look, her mannerisms, her again, her speech pattern was really hard to try and find. If anything, I used Jane Fonda, but like early Jane Fonda, like in the 60s when her in Barefoot in the Park, the Neil Simon play that was turned into a movie that she did with Robert Redford. I kind of followed that channel, and I worked with a dialect coach on trying to find the entry into Janie. Janie was a bit hard because of the fact that she was a real person. There was not much footage or recordings of her speaking. The dialect coach, Linda Nichols Gidley, helped me kind of go, look, I think maybe this could work to try and channel Janie physically and intonation wise, speech patterns. And also too, as you know, Geraldo, the play was set in the 60s. It was based on real life facts. So again, people back then have a different way of moving, speaking than what we do today. So you had that on top of that as well. So it's like an onion, with all these layers that you've got to consider for sure.
That's amazing. It's amazing to hear you, to listen to you explaining how you go about all of these changes. And as you explain it, you make it look easy, but I'm pretty sure it's not.
I think, and obviously we'll probably talk about this later on, but I think, and I know one of the questions that you posed to me, I think when you discussed bringing me onto your program is what techniques and what's your process when getting into a character. At the moment, it really depends on the play, the time that you have to prepare regarding rehearsals and whatnot, and the character. So I have found that over the last 4 or 5 years that my process has been different for each and every one because of the factors, because they're varying factors that influence the way you attack the work.
And do you think it's part of your maturity as a performer?
I think so, yeah. I think actors have to be adaptable. And I would like to think that SJ is adaptable as a person and as an actor. Yeah, not just as an actor, but also as a person. And we just have to be. I've been in many productions where I've worked with older actors that are so set in their ways, and they can roadblock a lot of the process and they can ruin the experience for others. And I don't want to be one of those actors. I don't want to be one of those people. Oh, I worked with SJ. God, she's a bitch. She's just really stubborn, isn't she? Like, I don't want anyone to speak to me like that, like about me like that. I want to be able to go, oh, SJ was fun. She jumped in. She just came in and just threw something on the floor and molded it how she does. And, like that's what I want people to remember me as an actor, is just someone that jumps in and adapts and works with what they've got. And I think that's with any creative. You work with the tools and the inspiration that you have in front of you, and that's how I believe you can create great art in whatever medium.
Right. Just on the same note, in Gods and Little Fishes, was it 2017?
Gods and Little Fishes was it was during COVID, so
2020.
2020 or 2021, I think. Yeah, it had won 2021. It had won the Seagull Award in 2020 and part of the season with the Seagull, the playwright award with New Theatre is that if you win it the previous year, you're part of the season the following year. Yeah.
You played a little boy, right? And then you went on to play other characters, and now you played finally these 3 characters in Mercury Poisoning. Are you able to tell what changed in your performance? What changed in yourself as a performer from one work to the other to nowadays?
Time. I think I had time on my side because the plays that you mentioned were a year apart, pretty much. So I've been very fortunate, to be able to at least keep my acting brain and my performance brain. I've done a play a year, pretty much. I've been very fortunate in that. Um, with Gods and Little Fishes, I had played a little boy in my graduating year at NIDA, and it was Kit Williams's first version of Cloud Nine that he did with us before he did his professional run at STC the following year, or maybe a year after that. And Heather Mitchell played my role. Um, how I got Gods and Little Fishes was because 9 years after I had done that role, the writer and director Richard Sydenham had seen me play Edward in Cloud Nine and remembered my performance. And when he approached me 9 years later saying that he remembered my performance and had me in mind for the role was very not only flattering, but quite really touching, to have someone have, remember your performance, and so I felt really compelled to do his piece. So after 9 years of playing a little boy, you've got to get back into the joy of playing. But it was very fortunate enough that I was teaching speech and drama to young children. And there was a particular boy that I taught who was such a joy to teach. His name was Philip. And I kind of based Jeffrey on Philip. Philip had this real innocence. He was 9. He had this real innocence about him. He was quite mature, though. And I think, children back in the 50s, because that's when the play was set, because it's based on a true story. I don't know. There was just this real pure innocence that Philip gave that I felt resonated with and related to Jeffrey. And so I use, yeah, so it's like using your inspiration all around you, the environments that you're in. But then again,
And
it's
is it
also
is it
directors
some
as well that influence the way that you work. It's directors that influence the way you work and approach character as well, because every director is different how they direct. I know Richard was very different to compared to Kim Hardwick, who I worked with on Dead Skin and Mercury Poisoning. Um, so that can also influence the way you attack character as well.
but that capacity of like being a sponge in absorbing people's characteristics, being able to see how people behave, how people if they're innocent or if they're not, is that something that you always had with you, or is it something you developed as you were maturing as a performer? Like as a kid, were you did that happen to you from a young age? You were able to tell, yeah, this person is like that, this person is kind of like that, this person is kind of like that,
I
or
would
is it
say
like an actor? You developed
developed.
it.
Yeah. When I was a kid, um, I was just a showman, show lady, show woman. I just took on stereotypes. I didn't really think about it, I just wanted to be seen and just, yeah, I think knowing the nuances and details like what you described, I think I developed that over time, I think.
Is it? Do you think that's part of your process as an actress, as an actor? Is that something that you work on? Have been able to observe people and watch them as they go about their daily
Yeah,
tasks?
I think so. I think, I've really noticed. I've tried to be really aware of how much I use my phone when I'm on public transport, because I use public transport all the time. So I try to read, and so therefore I've got no headphones on, and so my ears and my I'm fully aware of what's happening around me. Um, and I think because I don't look at my phone, I don't listen to really music on the bus and stuff. I'm open to watching. If I hear something that brings my attention, I'll start to look around and see how people sit, converse with each other, um, uh, uh, the way that they can switch off. Like, I think I find public transport fascinating. I really, really do. And and I kind of want to know where they're going, what they're doing, um, and create a little story for them. And it's funny that I should say that, because that's how The Night Alive was written. Conor McPherson wrote The Night Alive. It was purely an inspiration from him seeing a couple argue. He was sitting in a park in Dublin on a bench, and he saw a man and woman fighting, and then they went off into a building together, and that's what kickstarted this idea for a play called The Night Alive. Um, so I think, like, I love watching people, how they eat, how they speak, how they, especially like, and I look at it when I teach, I teach two classes at the moment on a Saturday. I've got grades 4 to 6, and they're really lively and they'll jump themselves into everything. And then I teach years 7 to 10, and they're very shut off, and you don't know if you're reaching them, and because they're so internalized because of phones and technology, and they're not probably used to conversing in conversations and things like that. So I find it really, yeah, I find it human behavior so fascinating. So fascinating.
Amazing. You just mentioned The Night Alive, so I'll
Yeah.
jump into that topic.
Sure.
For that show, you were nominated for the Best Supporting Actress at the BMW Awards.
Yes.
I happened to read A Night Alive. What a
yes.
brilliant story. What a sad, brilliant story.
Yeah.
And what an interesting character. How was it like portraying Amy Clement?
Amy.
Amy, yes.
So Amy, it's interesting, you're the only female in the cast in terms of the story. She's the only female. And the cast were great. And, as we discussed, Darren Sabadina, Darren was in the cast with me. We just had a really good laugh, really good laugh. And it's, look, Amy was hard in the fact that she didn't have much dialogue, but she was on stage for, decent amounts of time, but she didn't have a lot of dialogue. There were either one-word sentences or, little humps, like, little sounds agreeing with the comment before from the other character. I did find her challenging at the start. However, once we got into performance, and I find that I've noticed this of late with my process, that, for some reason I find stuff on stage in front of an audience that I didn't realize in the rehearsal room, because the audience see things from the outside perspective that you don't see when you're on the floor rehearsing. And then when you go off stage or after that scene, you go, oh my God, I was so stupid. Of course, I didn't see that. Or, whatever, or it makes you give more vocal energy on a particular word, to make that joke sit better or that kind of thing. But overall, Amy was a real, I don't know, she was a sad, sad character. She was lost. She was a lost soul. And she was a joy to play. And when you have a lost soul and everything, it's good to have a good support team with your other actors as well, because it was a play that dealt with heavy themes, suicide, domestic abuse, drug use, somewhat homelessness, poverty, and they're big themes. So it helps when you've got a good team behind you to have fun, or find the fun and the lightness out of such darkness.
And where do you draw from to portray such a character? Do you learn anything, or do you think actors learn something from the characters they play?
Yeah. It was recommended that I watched the director, Moy, may he rest in peace. He passed away actually not that long ago. He recommended that and he was from Galway, so he was an Irishman himself. He recommended that I watched Love Hate, which was an Irish drama. I watched the first couple of episodes, and I think there's 3 seasons. I couldn't get past the first. The first season was it's hard stuff, and it's written brilliantly, but it's dark. Irish crime gangs, drugs, the way that they live, and everything. So really, I found inspiration through Love Hate, the TV show, to find the rhythms for Amy. And also, perhaps she was part of this kind of environment and family and whatnot. So, because I didn't really know much about that part of Irish life, my graduating play, I did Sucking Dublin by Enda Walsh, again, another Irish play. And, that was tough as well. But it was very different. Still hardship, but different. But yeah, I think Love Hate helped absolutely, watching that, and the grittiness and the grime and yeah, that's what I used for that.
And do you learn anything from the characters you play? Do you think actors learn from the characters they play? Is
Yes.
there some sort of exchange between you as a performer and this imaginary entity that's the character?
Yes. I think we gain empathy for sure, and maybe to a point sympathy as well, because I was told never to judge a character. Like, I've never done drugs in my life, yet I had to play Amy was a drug user, and had a toxic relationship with a drug dealer. And I don't know about that. I don't relate to it. However, you know I understand, after doing the role, I understood that, people have to do what they have to do to survive. It's all about survival, and people will do anything to survive. So when I do see people like Amy in the street, especially in town, in the city, when I'm going to work or anything like that, I my heart breaks, for those people. I don't judge them, because I understand that we've all got to do what we've got to do, you know. Um, yeah.
That's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. I think,
Mm.
yeah, that's so inspiring. Well, you've talked about a few Irish plays. Um, you've played Amy in A Night Alive.
Hmm.
You've played Denise in The Approach,
The Approach, yes, that was
another
last
Irish
year.
play.
Other Irish
Is
play.
there is there a geist? And Darren was actually saying that he loves Irish plays. He
Mm.
thinks Irish playwrights are excellent, are amazing.
They
Is
are.
there a geist? What is it with the Irish plays that they are so appealing?
Uh, I've got to try and find the words for this. I'm trying to sound poetic here, so give me a minute. They're unassuming. So when you read it, you start reading it, um, you're completely turned around 180, because the plague that you think it's going in one direction, and all of a sudden it just changes, and it's so unexpected. But the way that it's done, it's so intelligent and it's so smart. And I know they both mean those same words, those two words, but they're just clever, and and they're filled with such, they're just filled with gumption. That's the only word that's coming to mind right now. They're just filled with such. They're loaded. That's what they are. They're loaded with things that we can connect to, or that we've ever felt before, in such a beautiful and poetic way. The Approach, that was written purely. The writer Marco Rowe, he wrote that purely from improvisation. He got these three particular actors that he wanted to work with, these three beautiful Irish actors, and they were in their 40s, 50s, and they were in on the floor. And I believe they talked about a few things and stuff, and then all of a sudden, I think they were recording it, and these scenes came to life. And then he took whatever came out of the improvisations and wrote this play. Um, And I had few people watch the show thinking, like, not realizing until the third act, or like not third act, but the third interaction of holy shit, this is what's happening. It's like forming a Mensa puzzle. Sometimes, it makes you think. It's not cotton candy for the brain. Irish plays, you're there to think and to be challenged and to be affected somehow, I think. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And do you think that translates to the actual performance as well? Do you think that translates to you, like in terms of acting and in terms of directing? Do you have to think of all of those small hints that you're going to give the audience throughout the play so that that puzzle forms at the right time?
Absolutely. Because look, the approach for me, in terms of reading the text on its own, when I read it the first time, I kind of went, oh, okay. Yep. Right. I think I get it. Like, I was a little bit like, oh, okay. Like, I love the writing. The writing is great. And I connected with Denise really well, because I actually didn't know when I read the play who I was going for. And when they were like, oh, you're Denise, you're going to play Denise, I was like, oh, great. Awesome. Because I really connected with her. She's great. And then what happens is that then once you get on the floor and you start rehearsing it and peeling away, and it's like being a detective, it's finding the clues. And because it was so text heavy, you had to make sure that you, in a smart actor way, is to highlight those clues so the audience could piece it together like a puzzle. And so when they walked out, they, and you saw them after the show, they were like, you didn't want them to say, oh, I didn't get it. You wanted them to be able to realize, oh, so that was that, and then that was connected with that, and that's what meant that. You want to be able to have those conversations after the show. So sometimes with plays like that, you need to kind of lean a little bit and kind of hint towards the clues, for them to piece it together. Because the approach was hard. It was a hard text to learn for me, and to also for people to come and see the show. I know people needed a little guide before coming and seeing it. And then some people that I didn't give the guide to came afterwards and were like, so can I just ask you a few questions? This is what I want to know. And then you'd be able to help them out, kind of thing. So, yeah.
Interesting. And do you think there is some sort of connection between Australia and Ireland, in the sense that there is a background or something in common that might draw the two countries together, the two types of performers together?
I think historically, definitely, I think there is a connection. My maiden name is Kelly. I come from an Irish family, a few generations before me, but I think it's that idea of
maybe in the sense that there is a sense of humor that is shared. There is some cultural things that are shared that bring and make for good for Australians to look into those plays and say, yeah, I get that. Even if it's got a different form, or a different format, or some things that are not what you usually see in a play, as you said, got a lot of text, no actually where this is going to, but many things that draw you to the character.
I think definitely in the working class. My family were working class, work their way into middle class, back in the day, kind of thing. I think definitely historically, I think that's where we get that idea of, the battler, the Aussie battler and things like that, because, Irish people work very hard. They've dealt with a lot of hardships themselves. And I think, we do too, in a way, in terms of the lower economic part of society, for sure. I think it might be slowly fading out, though. I think with the use of technology and involvement with American influences and things like that. Like, you look at America and Irish relationship, like you look at New York, New York was influenced by Irish. as well as Boston too. Like you look at Boston, that's a perfect example actually. Let's shift to Boston. Boston, Irish people flooded that place. And I think the way that they speak and act and everything, I think is very Irish. I think here in Australia, I think it's slowly fading out, although I could be wrong. If anything, if it still exists, I would say it would exist in the lower economic, um, uh, you know, hierarchy of society. I think not necessarily in the middle to upper classes, but definitely in the working class in Australia for sure.
Amazing. And going into Australian theatre for a bit, do you find there's a difference between Irish plays and Australian plays, or it doesn't matter, it depends on the playwright?
Depends on the playwright, but I think there is. I think there are some plays that come into mind, that I think share a relationship with Irish plays. Like one in particular for me is Holy Day, that was written by oh, I can't remember who's it by. I've forgotten. Is it Sewell or Bovill?
We can
We can look at that up.
Google it. Yeah.
But there's a play called Holy Day, and you look at that, and that's during the Australian settlement, period, where you've got, it's all bushland and, that white settlement thing. It's, 1800s, and it's devastating. It's a devastating play. And the
Andrew Bovill. Yeah, you're
Andrew
right.
Bovill, that's it. Andrew Bovill with Holy Day. You read that play, and the grittiness and the devastation in that play is very similar to some Irish plays that I've read. Showing showing things that, yes, we don't see every day, but do happen, or have happened, I should say, have happened, because it is a play that's written in a particular period. Overall, in terms of Australian plays, look, I think we have our own style. Not that I'm very good at a history lesson, but we look at it, from the 50s. A lot of plays were done. They had very English influences, not necessarily Irish influences. They were very English influenced. And then you have Ray Lawler coming in and writing The Summer of the 17th Doll, which talks about sugarcane people that come and chop the sugarcane for the season, and then they go to a fair and they buy their Cupid doll, and they're in their 50s, but it's a tradition that's happened for so long, and that is like a look into Australian life for the very first time, and then from Ray Lawler onwards, from Patrick White to onwards, I think Australia found their own voice and their own writing. Yeah, they found their own rhythms.
And for you, is there a geist, is there a spirit to Australia that translates into Australian plays or even into Australian movies? I have my theory.
Yes. Oh yeah,
I have my theory.
Can you tell me your theory?
I have a theory.
Yeah.
In Australian movies, I find that there is this theme of the human versus against the nature. Mad Max, Priscilla, Wake in Fright, there is this sort of like influence from the bushes, from the desert, from a very dangerous sometimes place that the human has to fight against. There's also the family themes, and I think that in the Australian plays I read, so things I know to be true, Hotel Sorrento. So you got the family as both a source of nurturing affection, but also a source of pain and hurt and struggle. And finally, you got social issues, immigration or colonization, violence. So you got these three, I think so far I can see these three major themes: human against nature, family, and social issues. Not sure if that's from my point of view as someone that comes from another place and takes a look, and then is just able to see the shallowness, just able to see the surface, and not actually grasp what people that have been here for their whole lives and been here for generations have actually felt in regards to how the themes are portrayed.
Yes. I think it's funny. I've never really thought of it like that, that it's human versus nature. I think that's a real beautiful way of looking at it. And now that I think about the things that you've mentioned, I think you're right. You know, you look at Wolf Creek, like, you know, Wolf Creek was kind of, you know, put us on the map a little bit when it first came out, that idea of these, you know, people in a, you know, this guy out in the middle of nowhere helps. But, you know, I think, I don't know. I think if it depends if you're talking, you know, theatre or plays and TV and film. I find that we glorify the bad guy a little bit. You look at a lot of Australian TV and look at the Underbelly series. All the Underbelly series are glorifying criminals, real life criminals, you know, that kind of thing. You know, look what we did with Ned Kelly, you know, glorifying him in that respect. I'm sure he was, look, I kind of translate him as the Australian version of Robin Hood in a way. But I think, I don't know, I get a little...
The Australian Billy the Kid also.
Yes,
right?
yes, perfect. The Australian
Called
Billy
Robin
the Kid.
Hood.
Yeah. That's exactly right. The Billy the Kid is another beautiful analogy. But I get it. I get a bit bored, if I'm honest, by that kind of thing, because I'm just like, oh, here we go again. You know, glorifying the criminal, glorifying the bad stuff. Yeah, I don't know. It's not my cup of tea in terms of entertainment for me. Hey, look, if they offered me a job on a set for that show, then sure, I'll take them up on it, you know. But yeah,
But it's not something you would sit down and watch on a Saturday night.
No,
What
not
is your
really.
cup of tea in that sense, SJ?
Oh.
What is that you like watching? What is that you draws you to sit down in front of the TV or go to the movies?
Sure. Look, I love period drama. I'm someone that's always loved period drama. You know, I was a Downton Abbey girl. You know, I love Jane Austen. And you know, seeing Jane Austen stories come to life. Look, Bridgerton, touch and go for me. I think with Bridgerton, it's a little bit sexualized. And look, don't get me wrong, it's hot. It's hot stuff. But I think, I don't know. I just think there's no poetry in it. I think it's just sex. And look, it's great, sure, but yeah, yeah. Period drama is definitely my thing. What else? I love English comedy. English comedy. I've you know, Dawn French, Jennifer Saunders. You know, they're my idols. Catherine Tate.
Fleabag. Do you like Fleabag?
Fleabag, yeah. Fleabag. I love watching her. Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She's brilliant, and I just hope that she does more stuff. Who else do I? Yeah, I'm definitely an English comedy or English drama person. I don't tend to watch a lot of American drama. Yeah, that would have to be, because also too, I think of myself as a period actor. I don't, if I'm honest, I'm not, you know, I don't have Botox in my face. I don't have the fillers in my face. You know, I don't look a very conventional modern day person. You know, I feel like I'm someone that's, I think, that shouldn't be in this time. I think I should be having my time. I should have my time a long time ago.
And what's that? What is that you? Because I find that many times actors or artists in general,
Yes.
there is a sense of not belonging. There's a sense of being a sort of the strange. And I've heard an actress, a Brazilian actor, actually talk about this. That the strange person, the kind of like weird person among the crowd, they look at things from a very original spot, from a very original place where you don't take things for granted. It's not because everyone else is doing that it should be that way. And then the person can see that, they can take that in, and they can show an original vision into the world.
Yes.
And I find that is that your case, or is it something different?
Um, I think it's slightly different. I think for me, it's human nature to compare. And so I can't help compare myself to other women my age or my build and all that kind of stuff that look, very conventional. I think that's where we're going at the moment, especially with film and TV, very conventional looks. I don't fit into that cookie cutter look. Hence probably why I think I should have been born a long time ago and had my time about 50, 100 years ago. But yeah, I think, I don't know, just these days I find it very hard to fit in because I feel like I'm not conventional. I don't follow a crowd. I'm not a crowd, follower or sheep. Um, I'm happy to go along my life at my own pace. Uh, for example, if someone says, "Oh, you got to watch this movie. It's really, really good." Everyone's raving about it. It's like, I'll watch it in my own time. I don't need to get on the bandwagon like everyone else, kind of thing. Let me take my time, kind of thing. Yeah. Mm.
That's interesting. That's it. That's original. That's your
Yeah. Yeah, maybe.
respecting yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
And in that sense that we've moved a little bit into movies, either Australian or you've performed in front of the cameras and you've performed on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a difference? Is it similar for you? What is your take on the differences or the similarities between stage acting and acting on camera?
So, look, I'll be very open and honest with yourself and your listeners. Yes, I've been in front of the camera, though my camera experience has been very small. Sadly, I haven't been that lucky or fortunate in the film television industry. I mainly have done theatre, but I agree. And this is what I tell my students: there is a big difference between theatre and film. Vocally, energetically, like your energy. Film is long. Film is it's a long process. You need to conserve your energy and your focus because even though you might not be moving around, running a marathon and being really physical, your focus and your concentration take it out of you and exhaust you. And I know that I found that quite exhausting. Theatre is different. Theatre is, you rehearse for a couple of hours or whatever, and then you're done. Leading up until then, the season, come in and do your show, go home, that's it. Whereas film, and this is also experiences that I've spoken to with friends that have been more fortunate than myself, is that they might get to a certain point in the day where they've got to stop filming and they've got to pick it up the following day. As an actor, you've got to remember where where they've stopped filming and where your character is in terms of emotional journey. And also too, don't forget, people, productions are filmed out of order. They're not filmed in sequence. They're filmed out of order. So you may have been doing a really big emotional scene that's at the end of the movie, at the start of the whole filming process. And, it's got to a point where the sun's gone down or, whatever the element is that has made you stop. And then you have to pick it up the next day, which is even more energy consuming because you have to pick up and bring back that energy, especially if it's a really big emotional scene. my time when I did Home and Away, unfortunately with Home and Away, that was a day shoot for me. I was a guestie on one of the episodes, and it was filmed in a day. Now, in saying that, I had to be there really early in the morning and get my hair and makeup done and, get dressed. And but I had to sit around for a very, very long time. And then by the time I got to my scene, or where my story kind of comes into the episode, the director was like, okay, everyone, let's get everyone that's in this scene. Let's do a line run, line, 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 line. And then said to me, oh, no, don't say that line, say something else, and completely changed my script there and then. And from what I learnt in the script, was completely different to what I did in the episode. So I think he had me speaking French at one point. I think I had to say a word. I think it was bonsoir or something like that. Anyway, but it was like, oh, can you say that in French? Do you know what it is? I went, yeah, I do. Fortunately, I did French in year 9 and 10, so that came in handy. And then, and then the shoot, and literally with Home and Away, and the way that they film, they're like a family. All the crew, and especially the regular cast, they're like a family. They're a well-oiled machine. When it hits 6 o'clock, that's it. Cameras down, everyone out. If they haven't got it, they don't have it. There'll be rarely a time where, like, it's like go gadget. Like, it's literally no messing around. Skinford, when I did Skinford for Stan, that was really strange. That was a really strange process, because the role that I'd play was actually written as something else. And then it was written as a web series, but then they were like, oh, let's turn it into a film at the last minute. And it got turned into a film, which is what you see on Stan at the moment. And seriously, with me, you'd blink and you'd miss me. You don't see me. And I'm also dressed as a Harajuku doll with bright fairy floss hair and big makeup. I look like a giant doll. And
Get by
that
fear.
that
Sorry.
episode.
No, sorry.
Oh
No,
yeah. That experience was, it was a lot of night shoots, so you had to make sure that you had enough rest during the day, so that you could, when you got to the location and you got all made up at 6 o'clock p.m. Like, we were at Campbelltown at an estate out at Campbelltown, and we went from like 6 p.m. in May all the way to 4 a.m. the following morning. So it's all about consuming energy and everything. I find theatre so much easier. Just and in regards to my little experience of film, I prefer theatre over film any day. But I would love to do more film if I was given the opportunity, for sure.
And how about the preparation for a shoot, for a character that sometimes, as you said, they will change your lines right then, right there. And how do you prepare for that? And how do you prepare for that and then get to change it? How is it for you?
I suppose it comes down to that word of being adaptable. You just have to say yes. It comes down to basic principles of improvisation, where you say yes to everything, and you just got to be open. And you just got to be ready. You really, truly do. You just got to be ready. Because it can happen to anyone. It can happen to anyone. And you just got to go with the flow.
Does that make you sort of stress, or do you get tensed, or do you just breathe through it? Do you have any process to deal with those times where we are kind of blocked or shy, or because actually I imagine going in as a guest in Home and Away, you got all these people, they already know each other, they already know how it works, they are so good at what they do, they don't have time to spare. You don't get to make many mistakes because they gotta keep the thing going.
That's right.
Does that make you feel different, or you just flow with it?
Can I swear on here?
Absolutely, yeah. You can say whatever you want.
Look, if I'm honest with you, fuck it. I just say fuck it. Just dive in and just, don't be an arsehole. Just fuck it. Don't be an arsehole. Just go in there and do your job. That's your job. If you're going to, my thing is, if actors are going to go in and pick nits and be like, oh, well, I wasn't told that there was going to be a script change and they're going to cause a fuss and everything, that just makes you look like an asshole. And I think, you know, again, it
But
comes back.
even when
Yes.
you agree, yeah, I can change. But
You're
can
just going
I?
to breathe. You're just going to breathe through it
Yeah.
and just go, I'm just going to throw shit to a wall, see if it sticks. And if they like it, great. If they don't, they can tell me I'm not going to lose my life. They don't have a gun pointing at my head. And if I get it wrong, they're going to shoot me. You know, if I do what I think they're asking and they go, oh no, do you think, I'll be like, yeah, sure. Because the end of the day, it's like going in for an audition. You go in for an audition with your choices and what you think you want to bring to the character in an audition, and then they give you direction and you adapt and take their direction on. It's exactly the same situation and scenario on set. It's exactly the same. And I think it comes down to taking direction, being open, being adaptable. Say yes and just breathe through it. Don't stress over it. Truly.
And have you always had that same approach, or was it something you developed through the years? That adaptability.
It's come and gone. I did lose it for a while. I had an experience doing a show. It wasn't, um, I went in thinking I was giving all I had, but just the way that I was being directed made me doubt my choices and made me doubt my acting ability. And it made me kind of go into a bit of a shell for a while. And so when I got dived into Gods and Little Fishes, which was my next show after this particular show, I had to talk to the director and say, look, I had this experience with this show. Um, I felt this is how I felt. This is what happened to me. Um, Forgive me if I fuck up on the floor or whatever. Just tell me what I'm doing wrong and I'll do it, basically. Like it made me doubt my choices. It made me doubt my ability for a while. Mercury poisoning was probably, actually, no, the approach and then mercury poisoning were probably the last two plays that I did that made me find my mojo and my fearlessness, um, to just do it and just bring my energy to the table. And if you don't like it, fine, tell me what you want and I'll give it to you, kind of thing.
Amazing. And do you find that that's because of a positive relationship you had with the directors? Do you find because that it was a nurturing environment, and also, or was it just you that said, "Look, let's put it under put that first one under the bridge, and let's move on with what we got"?
A little from column A, little from column B. I think it was a little water under the bridge, But I think also too it was trust with the director and the cast. So with the approach, Deborah Jones, um, we have a very strong working relationship as actor and actor director. So I have a lot of trust with her. And Kim, I had trust with Mercury Poisoning, where she had invited me to read the play, and if I, would like to be part of the project, invited me into the cast. And so that when you have that support and trust from the director to you, because they know that you can do the job and they know that you're good, it reaffirms your own self-confidence and your own self that, you know what, fuck it, I am good. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. You actually do have something to offer. And so I think that's what brought the mojo back. And I think, yeah, so I think it's trust with the director. It's a little bit of water under the bridge. And I think also time. I think time is also of the essence. Both the approach and Mercury Poisoning, definitely the approach actually, rehearsal rehearsal was very short. And so I didn't have time to doubt myself. I didn't have time to doubt what I was doing. I just had to do it. And I find I can work really well under pressure when it comes to time restraints. If there's time restraints and we've got to work quickly, I find that I work better because I get out of my own head and I just I just go, right, this is my instinct, I'm going to go with it, first instinct, and then let that grow as like a seed, and let the plant grow. And yeah, and I think mercury poisoning was a little bit the same, because it was a cast of 12, and trying to schedule 12 actors and get them in the one room was like herding cats a little bit. But it got to the 11th hour before we were opening and everything, and it was getting a little bit uneasy amongst all of us. But the fact that we were worked as an ensemble and there was no ego, the fact that we got on with it ended up making it a great show, pardon me, and a great experience. I think it's probably one of the best ensemble works that I've been a part of. It was just a well-oiled machine, and there were no egos. Everyone took their ego, left it at the door. We were all equal, and we got the job done. And everyone had a great time watching the show. And at the end of the day, that's our job, is to get the job done. We're actors. Bill Nye has the same kind of attitude. I remember watching a video of him. He was in a play in the West End, and someone had stopped him, and she was like, "Oh, how do you reach these points?" She asked him a real actory question. It was a bit of a wanky question, and he just went, "Love, I've got to walk over here. I've got to pick up this. I've then got to sit down, move that chair." And he said, "I'm just worried about what I'm doing on stage. And then whatever I've got to say, I've got to say." Like, it's our job to do that, So
Yeah. It's really inspiring, SJ, because I agree 100%. In a sense, it's our job. At the same time, it could be really difficult, because as you said, we are put against situations where we doubt ourselves, and it's so inspiring to see how you I think probably mostly through your honesty, through your vulnerability, and actually through your work, you're able to look. I had this experience, had to reevaluate if they were right or wrong. Doesn't matter. Let's move on. And I'm not sure if that many industries put the actor in front of that kind of self-confrontation so regularly, because each time you have to do it, you have to confront yourself and say, is this what I'm doing?
It was,
and then move on with whatever.
Absolutely. And it was this experience that I wasn't great. And look, I didn't conduct myself very well. I will put myself partially to blame, but I had massive imposter syndrome, massive. I was so excited to be part of this production, and I was so excited to work with this director, and I got into the room, and I hadn't really, like, I knew of the company, and I had worked with this director before in an educational system when I was still at drama school, but never outside of drama school. And when I finally got into the room and was doing this and was so excited, I all of a sudden felt very inferior and felt like, oh shit, I shouldn't be here, because every other person in the room was like a groupie of this particular production company, followed them, watched every single show, were like obsessed with it, and we were a bit like like they were just like mad for it, mad fan. And I was like, oh, like I'm a fan of their work, but I'm not that much of a fan, I'm not a diehard. And these people were so talented, and the way that they attack text and things like that was interesting and really like blew me away and made me think, fuck, I shouldn't be here. I really shouldn't be in this room. I don't deserve to be here. Um, and uh, there were also other factors as well that kind of put a lot of pressure on us. We had COVID. We were kind of in the rightness of COVID, with
Masks,
masks and separating and cases, and if you're in one of 10 people that's been in contact with this person, all that kind of tracking and everything. That was another thing as well. And yeah, and also too, the direction with my main character that I played was not how I saw it, and it didn't make me feel uncomfortable. But what I'm offered was, I offered what I thought to offer, and rehearsal were always really quick and fine and not arduous, or nothing like, oh, SJ, you need to do more this or that. It was like, yep, okay, great. And then I'd be like, oh, okay. We'd walk away, and I must have the look of someone with a resting bitch face all the time. And I remember the director constantly coming up to me going, you okay, SJ? You okay? Anything wrong? And it made me feel really like, oh, why are you asking me? Is it because I'm doing a bad job? And instead of saying that, I said, yeah, doll, I'm fine. If I had a problem, I'd fucking tell ya. Like, do you know it? Like, that's just me being my sense of humor, which I'm trying to, can be a little bit full on, and a little bit too strong. But it just made me doubt my choices on the floor. And I found performing it wasn't very enjoyable. There was only one performance out of all the performances we did that I just went, fuck it. I'm going to have fun and I'm going to do what I want. And I did. And it was bloody brilliant. And I loved it. It was the only time I had a good time doing that show. Every other time I just felt like I was just going through the motions, hitting point A, hitting point B. That's not being an actor. That's just routine, And so that it made me think. After that process, it made me rethink my approach to ensemble work, because it was an ensemble work, but it didn't feel like an ensemble to me. It just felt a bit classed, if I could be honest.
That's it, but that's so rich to hear, SJ, because I think overall you have this way of looking at things which is so brutally honest, which for me, because my wife and I always discuss this, because I try to get a sense of the overall, the general thing about cultures. And I find the Brazilian culture has capoeira. Because at the same
capoeira,
time,
yes.
It's a dance.
It's a
because
dance,
we love to dance, but it's also a fight.
That's right.
But I find that Australian culture has this honesty. Australian culture is absolutely crystal clear. It's so honest. It's precise. It's so authentic, and I find that. You yourself, as an Australian artist, you bring that culture, that even though maybe it's not something that you have to work to show, it's just that it happens to you. It's within you. And that's right. So rich, so beautiful. I imagine. I have this question.
Okay.
And it's a very philosophical question. You forgive me, but it's what is it? How is it like being you? What makes you you? What makes you you? What makes you SJ? In as if someone saw you and thought, oh yeah, that's SJ. Other than having a glass of wine or champagne.
I've had this sitting on the side. And I thought, no, I'll be professional. But what's happened is I've run out of water, and I need to wet the whistle a bit. And so I thought, I'm sure Geraldo won't mind. It's the sun is over the yard somewhere in the world. Do you know what I mean? So I just thought, I'm sure Geraldo won't matter. Excuse me.
Enjoy.
What makes
actually, me... I'm sorry, we're running. No. I don't know if you have a particular time that you need to stop this. It's just because it's. I find that you have so many interesting things to tell.
Oh dear. So what makes me me? Oh look. It changes. It changes as I've gotten older. What makes me me? Oh, the fact that I'm a I'm a loyal, honest, caring person. I'm a giver. Um, I'm a very selfless person. I hope I'm answering in the philosophical sense. Um, what makes me me? Yes, I'm. I don't know. I just love sharing, caring, and being honest and open with people. And yeah, oh God, that is such a philosophical question. I've never really thought about it, if I'm brutally honest. Um, I'm always thinking about the other. So yeah, I would say selfless, I think would be, if I was to put it as a word, selfless. Mm,
Amazing.
yeah.
Amazing. Just a couple more questions
Of
before we
course.
wrap up, SJ.
Sure.
Do you have any other creative outlets?
I
I think
do. You can
you
see
do. Yeah.
just there. So I play viola purely for pleasure. Although someday I'd love to join a little amateur chamber group and we jam playing Baroque music and a little bit of Bach and Telemann every now and then. Or Vivaldi. Vivaldi's my favorite. Oh, Bach and Vivaldi are my favorite composers. So I originally started playing violin when I was in high school, played violin throughout my time in senior school, and then I stopped. I kind of got back into it and then stopped again. And then COVID, I just felt like I wanted to learn something. With COVID, everything shut down. I couldn't act, I couldn't do anything. So I was just like, you know what? I need to be creative. I'm going to go back to playing music. So I went and found my viola teacher who also plays violin, and I learnt violin with her. And then, funnily enough, the play that I didn't have a very great experience with, I had to play musical instruments in the show. And I was kind of thinking about trialing learning the viola because there was where I got my violin. The Sydney String Centre, they actually had this deal where you could rent a viola for half price to have a trial of it because whatever. And so I thought, you know what, this would be a really great opportunity to learn the viola, and to see what happens. So I did, and I really loved it. It just because it goes down a string in terms of, so it's not as high, in terms of the order of stringed instruments. You've got violin, viola, cello, double bass. And there was just something really mellowy about it without, you know, moving down to cello kind of thing. And yeah, I converted to the viola, or as my viola teacher says, the dark side. Apparently, we're known as the dark side. And we're more fun apparently than violin players. Violin players are a little bit snooty apparently, whereas viola players were a lot more fun. And I actually had a guy tell me once at work where I used to work. He was a technical operations manager of a performing arts space, and I said to him that I learnt the viola or something. He went, "Yeah, I can see you as a viola player. Yeah, you're pretty chill and everything. Violin players, they're always got a broom shoved up their backside." I was like, "Oh, thanks." Cool. Other things. Look, I love to look. I am starting to get back into writing. When I was a child, I used to love writing. I wasn't a child that played with dolls and all that kind of stuff. I loved jigsaw puzzles. I loved painting. I loved writing and everything like that. And I actually came across an old journal that I wrote in when I was in primary school, and some of the thoughts that I had were just, I have no idea where they came from. I have no idea what planet I was on. And I just went, I wish I had that person. I wish I was that person again. Have those thoughts. It's funny how senior school or high school kind of knock it out of you a little bit, but and kind of conform you into a particular mold. And yeah, so I'm kind of dabbling, not much, but just dabbling. Um, any other creative things? I'd love to paint. Oh no, I'd love to do pottery. I've always wanted to get into pottery and like use a spinning wheel thing. And yeah. I'd love to do the spinning. I'd love to do that. one day. But yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. You are a person of many talents. Do you find that it started from a young age, or as the thing of observing people, you sort of grew into that as you matured? What was your process for getting into all that?
Yeah, no, I've been a show off ever since I think I came out of my mother's womb. No, so I used to so I was a classical ballet dancer in a previous life. So I danced for almost 20 years of my life. I did contemporary ballet, jazz, tap, Russian at one point. Um, and so the idea of performing and being creative, I've had in my body since I was 3. Um, yeah, so it's just been something that's just been in me all my life. And it's just grown stronger and more wanting as the years gone on. But I'll be honest with you, Geraldo, I am getting to a point in my life where I'm getting a little tired chasing all the time, chasing for creative opportunities. It's getting a little bit harder the older I get. At the moment, you know, one's ego or one's self-esteem can only last for so long, where you have to think about, do you keep going, or what do you do? So that's kind of the odd thought I'm thinking of. Not all the time, but it's just something that's crossed my mind every now and then. But I've always been a creative person, always. Um, I was a ballet dancer for a certain amount of time. I went to Germany. I auditioned for the Palooka Schule in Dresden, and to be a full-time ballet dancer there. However, I couldn't stay when I auditioned. They offered me a probationary contract for 6 months, but I couldn't start it right away. I had to come home and train a bit more, and then go back in the August, because that's when the European New Year kind of starts. But when I got home, I sometimes wish that I was injured and broke my leg and could never dance again, or something really dramatic. But no, sadly, it was money and finance. And it was my parents saying, we can't afford to send you back over to Germany. No, sorry, we don't have enough money to send you back to ballet. And, basically the choice was, do you want to keep going with this? Because we don't think we can afford it. And so I had to make the choice there and then, whether to keep going or not, if it was worth the money, the stress, the time. And so I felt like I needed to do a little Viking funeral, where I had to put my tutu and point shoes on a little raft and send it out to sea, and then send it on fire, to give it a whoof, a farewell, and I'm kind of finding at the moment, just with the cost of living and the way we're going, in the country's economy and things like that, it's getting quite expensive to live. And, my husband and I, we're wanting to buy a home. And, again, it comes down to that idea of support. Like, thankfully we're not having children. So we don't have, apart from a cat, and he's like 2 children in one sometimes. He can be a handful, but, life does come into it. And, I sometimes envy those people that, fight until they fight, or they get lucky. And, I feel like, I don't know, there's just a point where I think, will I have that moment or not?
And
am I chasing an impossible dream?
Do you think of your, I'm not sure if you agree with this, but I think there are 2 sides to a creative career. There is the creative work, and
yes,
there is a creative career. And we are not taught that. I don't think anyone's taught that. Maybe, I don't know, maybe here it is, but in Brazil I wasn't taught that there is the creative work, and that's what we're taught at school. Drama school, we go to drama school, you learn about Stanislavski, you learn about circumstances, you learn about body, voice, and etc.
yes,
And there's a career, which we're not thought about, because we think that if we do this enough, if we become good actors, this will happen. And sometimes it's not the case, because
No.
the career will happen even if you don't go to drama school. The Rock,
Yeah.
I heard this guy doing a stand-up. He said, I went to drama school. My voice, I worked so hard on my voice. The Rock is the best paid actor of all times. He never went to drama school. I don't think he did one acting class.
No.
But you guys can hear me at the end of the room, right? Because I did
Yeah.
voice classes.
Yeah.
Do you think in terms of work and career? Have you thought about that? Have you? Is that something you think about, or is that something that you deal with, or you find that it's just because there's also the thing that sometimes there is not a way in the industry to absorb so many workers, and finally there is the thing that sometimes that particular career that we see people go on, like Margot Robbie or Nicole Kidman, actually that's not what we want.
No.
We think that that's what we want, but maybe that's not as exactly what we want.
No.
And even
No, I understand. Look, for me, I think the want I want for my career is to be able to go from one job to the next. Doesn't need the glitz. It's just to be able to do what I've been trained to do consistently, and love, and do what I love doing, and just have the bonus of being, that idea of, getting paid to do what you love. That it comes down to that philosophy of, if if you do a job that you love doing, you will never work a day in your life. That is what I strive to do. And that I do that with my teaching. I currently work at Winona Girls in North Sydney, and for NIDA, for the open program. And look, I do love teaching. It can be sometimes draining energetically, because you're dealing with young minds, and sometimes they come into class like they've just each drank a bottle of red cordial and they're going absolutely off the walls, and you got to try and bring the chaos back down. But I do enjoy that, because also too, that keeps my inner child playing and active, because I'm playing with them and helping them be being playful and that kind of thing. So I think it's just, look, currently for me at the moment is just financial, and being able to be financially supported doing what I love doing without having to stress. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing about independent theatre. As much as I love doing it, and I love my experiences with every one of them, you put in all that hard work, and it's up to you to market your show so you can get people to pay money and put bums on seats, so you get paid at the end of it. Now, if you do a show and it absolutely flunks, like, look, the approach was a bloody good show. So many people came up to us, absolutely loved it. Even the ensemble theatre were, some people from the ensemble theatre thought, wow, this would be great at the ensemble theatre in Kirribilli and things like that. But we didn't make money. We worked for almost 2 months, and at the end of it, the production lost money. Fortunately at the time I was doing a full-time job as well as doing the show, and yet the one or two other actors, they actually gave up work. They had to give up their casual work and everything to do the show, and they had nothing. So independent theatre can be hard, and so if for people out there that are a little bit, that are around my age or my vintage, that are wanting family stuff, I can understand how hard it is, and actually some thinking has to go into seeing if you can do it. You have to consider other things, not just your career. You have to consider other people, which is where I'm at the moment. I have to consider my husband. I have to consider our our dreams together and future possibilities. And you have to consider other people in the decision making when you say yes to a project, you know? And that's where I'm at the moment. I remember reading I think this was a couple of years ago, and I think it was Helen Dallimore. She was married. She's a musical theatre actress, beautiful musical theatre actress. And I think she had to stop doing independent work. I think at one point she was kind of doing independent work quite a bit, and she had a child to feed and keep a roof over her head. And she just went, I've got to stop doing this because I can't survive, And I think, look, I know the MEAA, which is the Actors Union, do as much as they can, but I don't know. I just, like, I'm a member still, but I don't see, there's not much support for us out there, for those independent actors. Because look, I've always been told the process goes like this. And this is what I told my husband when we first met, and he completely understood, is that you graduate, right? You do the independent shows, you work for nothing, you hope that, you invite as many people that you can from bigger theatre companies to come and see you, and if you do a good job, they'll remember you and you'll get into paid acting work doing main stage shows and things like that. Like that was the process that I was told would happen. But it hasn't happened. And so, you kind of have to put life into perspective a little bit. A lot of NIDA tutors that I work with, they're actors as well, such as yourself, Geraldo. And, there used to be the saying, what was it? Theatre is my wife and film is my mistress, Nowadays, it's my full-time job is my wife and acting is my mistress. That's the philosophy at the moment in amongst us, in our community. Those people that haven't made it or, are still trying to make a name for themselves and make themselves memorable, So, yeah, I think it's hard.
Yeah, I think I would just add to that we got our own standards and dignity that we strive for in this industry. And sometimes the industry does not give it back to the artist. But that doesn't mean that the actual work hasn't been put. That doesn't mean that a project is of a lesser creative quality because it doesn't make money. It's just that there is a gap between what we are giving and what the industry or what we are able to make of that a business, in the sense that it's just the same, it's just as talented, it's just as creative, just as powerful. It's just that to get people to come to the theater, it's a nightmare.
It is a nightmare.
It's difficult.
It's like pulling blood from a stone. But like, I just want to preface by saying, like, no matter what show I'm in, whether if it's independent or whatnot, you will get 110% dedication and energy from me. I do not differentiate, it's independent theater, I'm not going to give a shit. I'll just come in, do my, thing and not care. No, like, because the thing is that we are constantly looked at. We're constantly observed. You never know who could be watching you. So I always give my 110% because someone has sweated over this play. Someone has written it, put it, come up with these creative ideas and put them into this production. And you think, that's fucking brilliant. I want to be a champion for you and I want to be part of this amazing opportunity, So I just wanted to make sure that, I wasn't being elitist or anything like that, but I think I'm getting to a point now in my career where I'm just getting a little tired
of giving and
giving and just not getting as much back as I would like because of especially the amount that I'm giving.
It makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's also a shifting point where you're able to look at it through a different perspective and find that niche, that path that
That's right.
allows you to because I think I have the same issue. And when sometimes when you change a little bit the industry, when you go into a slightly different industry, where, not saying that people didn't put as much effort, they put as much effort as the actor does, but sometimes you've been working as an actor for, I don't know, 20 years, so you've got a 20-year experience as a professional. And that's not very easy to find, a professional that's been doing the same thing for 20 years consistently. That's got some worth in it. But other industries, if the person's been working for 20 years, it's something. So I think it comes to a point where we gotta understand and see what fits best with our personality, with what we're giving and what we want to get back from what we're giving. So I completely identify with how you're putting things and how you're feeling, because I feel the same way. I find that there is a gap between what theater, independent theater, gives and what independent theater gets. It's
right.
not it's just how the structure works. It's an issue. Yeah. SJ, I'm gonna ask you a final question.
Oh, okay.
Do you a friend of mine once taught me this exercise, that when you create a character, you should create a portrait of that character once they're completely happy, once they've achieved everything they wanted in their lives, once they've reached the peak, let's say, once they've reached and they conquered everything they wanted. And you paint that picture and you put the character there and you put all the things that you find that the character wanted to achieve. If you had a picture of USJ at the end, or when you achieved what you wanted to achieve, what would be there with you in that picture?
I'd have to say, look, it'd have to be one of my wedding photos with my husband, I think. So my husband and I, we got married in Scotland, in the Isle of Skye, and we got married in the Quirang, which is these huge big cliffs. And I think a picture of us together, walking up these cliffs and everything, I think that is the picture, because I think if you look at it at a metaphorical sense, is that because we're in such wilderness and such vastness of nature, to the point where it was dangerous, or it is dangerous, it's that idea of the unknown and but what could be open and available to us, the sky's the limit, as they say. So I would have to say it'd have to be one of our pictures taken by the wonderful Andrew Ray, who is a Isle of Skye local, who took our photos. I would have to say it's that. I'd have to say it's
Amazing.
that. And then I think once I win my Oscar, if you were to ask that question again, I'll say it's me holding my Oscar.
Oh.
Oh dear.
That's amazing. That's a pretty good picture to have. There's an Uruguayan writer, and he wrote many beautiful things. And he said, people asked him, "What are dreams for?" And he said, "Dreams are meant to keep us walking," and that's what keeps us walking. Your Oscar, my Oscar, the person, everyone that dreams of an Oscar, that keeps them walking. That's amazing.
Yeah.
SJ, thank you so much for
No,
being
thank
here.
you.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the Creative Ticket.
Thank
I'm
you
really
so much.
grateful. It was amazing having you, amazing getting you to share your vision about Australian plays, Australian cinema, your work in the theater, your work in front of a camera, and all the insights on the industry. I think that's a very precise, very powerful, and honest introduction to the listeners that are not very familiar with the Australian industry, and also into such a talented and wonderful performer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Geraldo. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Creative Ticket podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please remember to share this with your friends and family and subscribe so you can stay up to date with new episodes. Feel free to reach out to hello@pacificvideo.com.au for feedback and suggestions. We would love to hear from you. Take care.